Welcome to Mitten Music. My name is Kevin Bessert from 20 Front Street in Lake Orion. Sit back, relax. We're about to talk about our venue and Michigan music in general. So join us.
I think we're all done. I think that was the whole podcast.
I think he signed up as a third member of the podcast.
I was not expecting you to sound that enthusiastic right off the bat.
That was amazing.
I wasn't necessarily going to disclose this, but I do have a broadcasting degree from Central Michigan University.
That's awesome.
In a former life, I did do some broadcasting stuff.
That's
so
sweet.
It's been a while, but I don't feel completely out of my element.
That was perfect.
Man, he hid that little gem from us.
Yeah, he did.
Good job, Kevin.
I think my kids or people. I'm not trying to brag or anything. Your kids, your family's told me that I have not just a face for radio, but a voice for radio as well sometimes.
I
right?
agree.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
agree.
Yeah.
Jeff does too, but
That's why we do this, right?
yeah, that is absolutely correct. Kevin, thank you for having us out.
Hey,
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys making the trek over from Grand Rapids and being able to come check out our venue. I know we had talked about doing this in a few different spots, but I really wanted you guys to come and be able to see the venue so that you got to experience it as we talk about it.
Yeah, I'm glad we did. This is awesome. Thanks for hosting us. Yeah, just looking here and hopefully we'll have our video posted too, but just to see the venue. Very small, intimate venue. I want to hear a lot more about the history and just the way you guys set this up, because I think there was a lot of time and intention put into this.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just to kind of give you a background and kind of where things started, Alan Getz, who's one of the other owners, along with myself, and there's actually 6 families total. But the story kind of begins with Alan was actually up at a men's retreat in northern Michigan. And there was a speaker at the men's retreat that weekend, a phenomenal speaker who I've had the chance to hear before by the name of Jamie Winship. And Jamie's message that kind of whole weekend to that group was a message that the story was kind of, ask God what he wants you to do, go do it. Or, ask God, what is he asking of you, and go do it. And Alan said that whole weekend as he was praying about that and what Jamie was asking, he said he kept seeing this old building in downtown Lake Orion that was vacant at the time, and he said he just felt like music needed to be in that building. Which, if you would have seen this building at the time, was a crazy thought because this building was vacant. There was no utilities. I mean, it was in really bad condition. So the story goes that Alan came back, got his wife, kind of told his wife. They came down here and kind of you could literally just walk into the building almost.
Wow. Yeah.
And they kind of checked it out. And Alan, again, he just felt a strong calling that he wasn't sure exactly what it was going to look like or how it was going to come to be, but he just felt music needed to be in this space. So kind of fast forward, he started kind of rounding up a group of people in the community, friends of his and people that he knew, and they kind of, piece by piece started talking this idea through and contacted the gentleman who owned the building, and so they got a group together. And at that point, I wasn't involved.
Okay.
So I wasn't initially. I wasn't involved, and they started putting in just countless hours of work to. But at that point in the story, one of the key pieces, he got one of our other owners, Scott Loudon, was one of the first people Alan contacted. And Scott is a audio engineer by trade. He actually owns a recording studio not far from here.
What's it called?
Ashroom Studios.
Okay.
Ashroom?
Ashroom Studios. Ashroom. And so he's an audio engineer by trade. In this room, you're sitting here looking around. This room was really is all him. From the design, from an audio perspective. I've heard Scott say, one of the things that when he was kind of envisioning or designing the room was there was a thought of back in the day, there was actually rooms built in people's homes to come hear Beethoven play, and they were room. And he said he kind of went into this with this thought of a recording studio, but a venue kind of all in one, and that was kind of his vision. And every element here. That could be a whole separate podcast. Right. From the angled brick to the way the room is set up, where the hallway you walked in here separates, kind of creates a sound barrier. The green room on that side creates a sound barrier. So much intentionality from an audio perspective, or and we can get into, is kind of, I feel, become our calling card all these years later.
Sure.
So yeah, he got Scott on board, which was obviously a key piece, and just so many people in the community just started to rally around it, to kind of bring it back together. Where I'd seen an article in the paper initially of when they were I read this article and I'm like, oh, these guys are doing this, and I'm like, man, it sounds pretty cool. Something at the time when I read the article, I've said this a few other times, like I just kind of was like, man, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm gonna get involved in this in one way or another. And then just fast forward, I ended up meeting, and a few of them I knew who they were in the community. They weren't personal friends of mine, but I was aware of who they were. Alan being one, Jay Richardson being another one. And then we ended up getting more connected via our church, and I met them, and then I'm like, wait, you're the guys doing the listening room, and we started talking more and more, and again, to kind of make a long story longer, they ended up losing one of the initial partners that was involved. They ended up losing. And at the time, I just felt compelled. I said, I would love to be involved. I think one of the best parts about our ownership group with having all these families that have come together is we all kind of play our role. We all kind of brought something unique to the table, and it's really just become this group that it's been so fun to watch and do life with, because everyone brought something different. And what I told the group, or the value proposition I thought I brought, was with some of the musicians and booking. And I post college, I lived in downtown Chicago for a period of 3 years, right out of college, and was working in the broadcasting industry.
You went to CMU, right?
I did go to CMU.
Perfect.
Yep. And then after CMU, I moved to downtown Chicago for 3 years. And at the time, one of the guys I was kind of hanging out with or living with, working for a startup record label in Chicago.
That's cool.
And it was Aware Records at the time. And that record label at the time was doing a ton of, signing indie artists that were up and coming.
Yep.
And because of that, those period of years I lived in Chicago, I went to a ton of shows. I mean, I was single, I was young, we were going to shows we were going to shows all the time, and I saw, John Mayer in a room smaller than this.
Wow.
And he was like not 18 maybe, and selling CDs out of his backpack.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just watched that record label launch some of these artists. Like I'd see them and then they would just take off. And so I told the group, I said, I think, through some old connections, people I knew, I'm like, I'd like to help, because I think what you're doing is cool. And I ended up becoming part of the group, becoming one of the owners with the group, and then slowly kind of started seeing what I could do booking wise. And now we're in year 7 now, but I've been doing primarily all the booking for years.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I'm glad you mentioned the brick on the wall, because I noticed that earlier. I was like, is that accidental that the brick is all knocked out? But it seems like it's almost in a pattern, or there's some symmetry to it too. I'm like, it's not accidental. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask that eventually. That is just, and I'm sure Scott knows reasons why, and he did adjusted the brick the way he did and everything.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, everything from the design of what you're seeing here to the matching door back there. I mean, we've had tons of artists comment on this. This is a door this was a really cool story about this. This is originally from India, but Scott, I think, and I hope I get the story, he found it in Arizona, but then, and he had it in Arizona, but then he was trying to figure out how to get it here from there.
Sure.
And the very cool part of the story was the way this all went down, and the way this got here was Keith Urban was on tour, and he had a huge semi truck, and somehow they got it into Keith Urban through connections. It got into Keith Urban's semi. That eventually that tour made its way here, and they got it up.
My gosh!
Yeah.
Wow.
Someone we had talked to Ava Swiss not terribly long ago, and she was like, how important connections were. They're not just because you want to be a good person and make friends. You need to make connections in the industries that helps you move forward.
Yeah.
It's so true.
And you just got to know who's going to throw it on the truck and get in here, right?
If anybody's curious about the what we're talking about, on our website for our podcast page for this episode, we will have tons of pictures of everything that we're talking about to show it off, so you guys can get a good view. And we're playing around with video a little bit lately too, so we'll see how much.
Because the background outside of that door, right? Is that mostly all wood?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I know we talked a little bit before we came on, so just a couple other cool things I like to highlight about the room. We do have kind of stadium seating, but it's church pew seating, which is somewhat unique.
Comfortable church pews,
Yes.
I might add.
Yes.
Those were taken from a church in Cairo, Michigan, that our group was able to go up and get from the church that was closing down and bring those down here. The stage floor that we're actually sitting on right now, that is from the Michigan State Fairgrounds.
Oh, that's cool.
The gymnasium there. So yeah, that's where the floor came from.
Wow.
So yeah, just, everyone again, it was a collaborative effort, and a lot of that I wasn't a part of at the beginning, but just countless hours of blood, sweat, and tears to put this crazy idea together.
Yeah, that's a cool story, and it's cool. Yeah, all the pieces are all kind of, they've got some historical meaning and all that stuff too. So
Yeah, it's cool that you can remember stories about just different parts of what this room is about. That's just fun. It's a long-lasting, interesting.
So you guys started, you said 7 years ago?
Yep, our first
Roughly?
year, we actually just celebrated in October. We celebrated our 7-year anniversary because it was October of 2016.
Okay.
So we're just 7 years in. Obviously, because a lot of times I sit here and I'm like, man, how has it been 7 years? But with COVID, that did take pretty much a couple years right out of play.
Yeah.
Because we were pretty much closed one whole year completely.
Yeah.
Then there was kind of a startup
Trickle.
a trickle where we started back up and then we kind of closed back down.
Yeah.
And so, it was really, to me, the better part of 2 years that we were doing little to nothing in this room. Now, during that period,
You were probably the most busy.
yeah, during that period, we did a lot of things during that period to not only, to keep us afloat, but then what was going on in the industry. So, we were busy, but there was nothing going on in this room.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's like a whole year of just conversations you could have to build up for your next however long of shows and schedules and whatever.
Yeah, one of the, when you look back now and you think, man, just what that did to our industry. But now looking back, there was some things that came out of that I'm incredibly grateful for now. One of which is, we touched on this briefly, of, there were some organizations that grew out of that. One was on a national level, which is now NEVA, the National Independent Venue Association, was started right at the beginning of COVID, and I was kind of brought in early and was able to be a part of that as it grew. And then as the national organization grew quickly, a Michigan chapter of that, which was MIVPA at the time, Michigan Independent Venue. And so just tons of meetings and calls, and gave me the ability to meet so many other venue owners, both in the state of Michigan and nationally. It was really cool because so many of them said, like even here in the Detroit area, or like Michigan, like all these venues that you knew of, most of which I'd been to, but there was something in our industry prior to that. There was like just this competitiveness, right? Of like, well, I don't really know those guys because they're trying to sell tickets and we're trying to sell tickets, and it was this real competitive nature. And then all of a sudden COVID came and everyone was shut down, and we get on these calls and everyone's meeting each other and say, oh yeah. And it really was this spirit of like, it doesn't need to be competitive, man.
Yeah.
We're all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's so it was really cool to just, so now so many venues that, now if I go to I know who owns them. I can walk in and say hello and things like that. And so it was a lot of really cool things that way that came out of that shutdown. And a lot of those organizations now, are still going to exist and can do so much good because everyone kind of came together in that moment.
Yeah, that's great. Because I know, that was a struggle. A lot of places went out of business. Didn't make it. Right?
Yeah, unfortunately. Even here in Michigan, one of our, routing wise for us, it's so important if we want to get nationally touring artists to Michigan, we need to be able to not only get them to 20 Front Street, but a lot of times they need, at least one other gig in Michigan to make it worthwhile. And so for so long, one of the venues we worked pretty closely with was over on the west side of the state in Spring Lake called 7 Steps Up, because they were another listening room.
Have you heard of that one?
No, I hadn't heard until Kevin had mentioned
either.
that earlier today. Yeah.
7 Steps Up.
Yeah, and really we told them when we decided to do this and opened, we had initially reached out to them very early on because they were at the time in Michigan, and I had been there and was aware of them. Really, the only other people kind of doing what we were doing. Of course, the Arc in Ann Arbor is legendary and has been around forever, so they are kind of the gold standard. But 7 Steps Up was very similar in terms of capacity, in terms of the type of artists they were booking. So it just became a great relationship where we could book artists and they could play one show on the east side of the state, and then shoot over a couple hours.
That's cool.
Play a show on the west side of the state. But unfortunately, they're one of the ones, Jeff, to your point, that just closed recently and didn't make it. And I could name a ton of other venues, both in Michigan
Right.
and nationally, that have closed. Which, yeah, I mean, and that's why all those organizations, the one common thread there that all those organizations I was just speaking of are independent venues, right?
Yep.
Those are the ones we're banding together, bonding with, because in our industry, it's unfortunately it's the independents versus
The corporations.
the
or
corporations,
The big money
Yep.
back in this, that, and the other thing.
and so I mean that's the reality of the situation, and it's what's going on in our industry, and yeah, that we could talk about that too for a long time, but it's sad to see some of these independent venues that are struggling to make it.
Well, then that impacts these artists. A lot of guys that are just only can fill up a small venue in the first place.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to play bigger venues. They're not going to be able to maybe even get paid the right amount at some of these other places too. So it's important. I think that came out of COVID. I do think a lot of hope more people realized, one, music was dead for a while, and hope everybody missed it. And two, here's the things that you need to do to help support it.
Oh, absolutely. And to that point, I think from an artist perspective, what I've seen a little bit too is that some of the numbers of the artists that maybe used to do in a certain market, they were, pretty much guaranteed to do 300 pre-COVID. Maybe now in some of those markets, they're going back out on the road, but in that market where they were, pretty guaranteed to do 300 tickets, now maybe they're only doing half of that.
Yeah.
And so that changes some venue specific stuff. And so, I mean, again, having those venues at the different sizes for all different types of artists is so important in the industry. And so anything we can do, to support them is crucial as we move forward in like what this landscape looks like in kind of the live music industry.
Yeah. So you guys have national acts, you have local acts come through here. It's a mix, from what I understand.
Yep.
So how is that? You're obviously doing the booking. So how is that approach? What's
I mean, we do try and keep like a good mix. It's funny, when we first started booking, we were doing a lot of local stuff, a lot of Detroit stuff, and then it was like we were kind of first like, could we even get a national touring type artist? But it really was just a snowball effect of like we did get a couple that were a few contacts I had reached out, and we got a couple of national acts. And then so many of them were from Nashville, and they were going back to Nashville, and they were telling their friends, like, hey, there's this cool new room up in Lake Orion, Michigan. You got to check it out when you're there. And then I would hear from their friends, and then they would come, and then they would tell their friends. And, over the course of like those first few years of booking, it turned from where it was really me constantly having to reach out to where
The opposite.
the emails were incoming as opposed to me having to send outgoing emails.
Yeah.
And we're just getting so many incoming emails of like, hey, I've heard of you. And so that's kind of where it just shifted of like, now we have
feel good.
incoming stuff. Yeah. I mean,
gotta feel
it
good,
was
man.
it was a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah.
It was nice then. And then you obviously start working with, a network of agents and things like that work in those spaces. And then they start, we're knowing of the room and including them on tours and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, we still like to keep the local artists involved as well, and especially, a lot of it too becomes seasonal in terms of like, national touring artists are only out at certain times and stuff like that. So, there's times where we can feature more local stuff or statewide stuff. So, and then it just comes down to what fits in this room and what's appropriate for this room too, is part of what we, use to make those decisions as well.
I was just thinking when you were saying a national artist coming here as opposed to a local artist coming here, I'm thinking, well, how could you get a national artist here? They're going to have way more people that are going to want to come see their show, but you only got 80 seats here. Well, and then eventually dawning me, it's like, well, they're just going to sell it out in like 1 minute instead of, the other guys, if they do, all the way up to the night of, or maybe they don't sell it out.
Yeah, and I mean,
maybe that's the only difference.
What we've played with too is what different ticket pricing, right? So like, what.
Oh, yeah.
So what is the price point of like, yes, take any artist, one of your favorite artists, and say, okay, I could go see him here at a venue and pay X, or to come see him at a super intimate venue where you this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be willing to pay that. So
I would pay way more to see a band I enjoyed in a place like this than anywhere else.
It's the experience. You're paying.
Oh, for sure.
You're paying for the experience.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
And with that said, I mean, we've I think kept our ticket prices exceedingly low.
I saw them on the wall out there.
For
I was
what-
like,
for what-
really?
For what they are. But we have started to play with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And again, that's not just us coming up with that idea. That's more like kind of maybe what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so I think there is some things that there is, I think an appetite from audiences of like, yeah, if you're giving me my choice, I love this band. I could go see them in a 300 general admission venue versus, something like this. What am I willing to pay? So, I think, yeah, again, that's not, I don't think coming from us. I think that's more being driven by what's happening in the industry. And so that gives us, some other cool opportunities that we may not have had otherwise.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah,
that's so cool. I'm just in awe of this room. It's just amazing.
So
I love it.
Obviously, there was the word of mouth going on. Artists want to play here. There's something about it, and I mean I can explain when I'm here. But what are the artists saying? Like, why do they want to be here? Do they feel like they're? Well, one, the room is awesome from an acoustic standpoint, but is there just something a little extra that you guys are doing here that make that?
Yeah, I mean, I
better?
think what the vision for this place was from the get-go, when Alan said there wanted to be music here, and that was obviously all a part of it was creating a venue. But so much of what we do is, and you can tell by the room, right, is like it's artist-focused. Mm-hmm. So, the thing we hear from the artists repeatedly is, a lot of times they'll be on a tour and they're routing here or whatever, and the 2 nights prior to playing here, they played in a bar where they're playing on a stage and there's 3 TVs above them with the football games on, and
distracting.
They said there may be 100 people in the room or 200 people in the room, but they said if half of them are listening, that's probably a good number. And then they've done that 2 nights in a row. Then they show up here and walk in here, and you're looking at here where every person in here is
they're
it's an
here
intimate
for a
listen,
reason.
and they're watching the artists. There's no talking. Everyone is focused on what you're doing. And I think from an artist perspective, what we've heard is, again, when we're talking about numbers, and the perspectives are like, would you rather play for, in a general admission room of 300 with other things going on, or play to a room of 80 where every person is hanging on your every word?
Yeah.
And so that becomes the difference,
I
right?
can see that.
And then to further that, it's just about loving on the artist and appreciating the artist for their talents, right? It's like I think so many of these times they do get put in spaces or rooms that maybe they don't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And when they come here, we like to from the minute they arrive to the minute they leave, just make it about them and their talents and appreciating that. And so I think that's become what we do. It's about loving people. It's about loving the artist. And some of my favorite nights, I've said a lot of times I'll sit over here in the corner in the shows going on, and it's just, I think Tony Luca was an artist that we've had several times who's from the area. He mentioned this once. He's like, just the exchange you see of the artist on stage and how much they're enjoying, because it's their passion, but then what the audience is receiving at the same time, and that exchange that I've seen on so many different, so many shows, and you just sit there and see that exchange happening, and it's
Probably gives you chills.
It's special. And that's something only in that kind of listening room environment, you're gonna see, as opposed to some of these other venues we've talked about.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think the fact that your audience that's here wants to be here for the music. The artist obviously is here to play to the audience, but everybody's engaged into one thing, and that's the focus on the music.
Yep, and that's why you've seen this growth. I mean, we're certainly not the only listening room around. I mean, there's listening rooms popping up in our state nationally, because I think there was kind of, again, to get back to, there was kind of this desire of like, that's how people want to appreciate music. For the the real music lovers that aren't just going out to casually have kind of a background music at the bar, people that want to appreciate music, this is the environment that they want to do it in.
I remember seeing 20-ish years ago, a little more than 20, when, if you're familiar with the intersection in Grand Rapids, the previous location in Easttown, Grand Rapids, was more than this. It was standing room only. There was no seats or anything, but maybe 300 bar, really kind of dank. It was a hole in the wall place.
Sure.
That was the place to see a concert, man. I've seen so many shows there. I've seen bands that played there then and then have seen the same band play at where they are now. just completely different. And any day of the week, I'd rather see the old school
So
smaller
you just nailed it, right? So I think the other attraction to a room of this size or other rooms like this of this size is the attraction of like seeing the up and comer, right? So these are artists that many of them are, on a platform where they're playing this room, and
at some point.
We joke a lot here. Is like we've had artists play here, and it'll be their first time here, and we all laugh as we'll say, "Well, we're never going to get them back," because by the time they come back reroute this way, they're going to be on a path where now they're going to need a bigger room.
Yeah.
And I don't ever,
You're so right.
I love that. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh man, I wish I could get them back. I'm like, man, good for them that we were able to host them.
Right.
But they're on a trajectory that is like, yeah, they're gonna need a bigger room next time they come around.
But
I was going to say, I take half of my comment back. There's only one band that I recall I did see at both intersection locations, and that was Deftones. I saw, you'd have to pay $10,000 to see Deftones playing a 300-person venue these days. And even the intersection, that's too small for them these days, too.
But is there, to that point, though,
would they want to play?
Is there still an opportunity for your venue to get a big, huge act that it's just kind of a unique situation where, hey, yeah, your ticket prices are going to be high. But it's the intimate, it's like the
who
ultimate.
Would play here?
Experience.
Sufjan Stevens, he would play here.
I mean, you hear from artists, right?
You
hear from artists, whether it's artists we've had that now are probably, too big to come back. Or if I've just read or seen interviews with other artists that that are now like arena style artists, and they, they'll have a comment where they're like, man, I miss my old club show days, where I was playing. Like, those are the shows that and they miss that, right? So so to your point, I mean, yes, I do think, there's cool little things that can happen and pop-ups and stuff like that, or what's a price point people would be willing to pay. But yeah, we just had a thing like a week and a half ago, and it was a very unique situation of how it all came to be. But we had this group here from Nashville called the Woodbox Heroes, and it's this kind of Nashville super group that's just been put together that essentially is some of the best studio musicians in Nashville all kind of joined together to create this super group. But we had them here a week and a half, and Barry Bales was here. He's got 15 Grammys. I mean,
ridiculous.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And we're sitting there, we're like, they're playing, and he's back here playing stand-up bass, and we're like, because he plays with Alison Krauss in Union Station, typically, and he won a bunch of Grammys. He was writing with Chris Stapleton and all, but through whatever these circumstances we're like he's here playing in this little room in Lake Orion, Michigan. So I mean, there's been cool little situations like that. But to answer your question, I think there's definitely opportunities. And I get so many emails from people that are artists that have played here that have now gone on to way bigger things. And they're like, can't you get them back? And, where I was like, well, we would love to, but I do think some of those groups that I'm thinking of when I say that, I think would love to come back and play here.
Sure.
What that would look like, there'd be a lot that would probably go into that, but, And we've been able to do some cool things. Like one group that was one group that we had here very early on, and now is just gone. It's the Warren Treaty.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And so they played here. They were living in Albion at the time, and this was one of their first. I think outside of Albion, they came here. Max Brown, who's now their band leader. This was his first gig ever with them. Was here, and so we had him once, and that was I remember sitting right in the back row there, and they came out and their first song, they played one, and I was just like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
So they played here that time, and we were all blown away. We had them back I don't even think it was a year later. They played 2 shows, sold them both out in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And then they just started, it was harder and harder to get them back, but they were so thankful. They were always willing to come back and play for us. So we knew we couldn't put them in this room, but we ended up doing a thing that we had a relationship with an outdoor amphitheater here in Orion Township that the township owns.
Okay.
That's a cool little outdoor amphitheater. And so we brought them back one summer and did them outside where we could do obviously a lot bigger. And so they were able to come back and play for us, just not in this room. And so it was fun to have them back. And I mean, now next week they're nominated and performing on the ACMs. And then I just saw they're going to sing the national anthem at the Lions game on Thanksgiving. So I mean, they're doing great.
Yeah, they are. They blew up pretty quick.
Yeah.
But there's a reason for that because they're
for sure. Yeah.
phenomenal.
Well, Kevin, I got to say, if you guys ever get Tool to come play here, save me a seat right here. I want to be spit on by everybody in the band. I want to be that close. So when that happens, I'll know when it happens. Don't worry.
My neighbor has the same. My neighbor has the same exact request. So
we're gonna be duking it out.
I can make you both happy.
I don't know where Maynard would be though, because he wants to hide.
He does. There's not many hiding places around here. Maybe in the back. Maybe back in the corner.
He just needs to go in the green room.
Yeah, for sure. This. I cannot wait to see a show here. I'm going to be scouring, just waiting for that. There'll be someone that I really enjoy. I'll be coming here, and I will.
Yeah.
Even if Jeff can't come with me, I'll drive myself.
It gives me a feel of like, I mean, I was in New Orleans not too long ago. I got a chance to go to Preservation Hall.
Yeah.
And just that small, intimate, I mean, obviously a different setup. This is a little bit more modern and everything, but just that feel of that connection with the band. And
yeah, and I was telling you guys, I mean, the one we hear, if you look online, we get this all the time. Like, we get called the Mini Ryman, which is a reference to the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. Which, if you guys have never had a chance in Nashville to go see a show at the Ryman Auditorium, it's called the Mother Church for a good reason. But they have church pews as well, and that's always been kind of their calling card. So we have artists all the time that walk in here and see the church pews, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is like a mini Ryman." And so, yeah, I mean, because that. Ryman obviously much bigger, but
same feel,
yeah. Same kind of like look. Just really artist focused.
Yeah.
And just so many great shows. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago. I'm like, I have to go see a show there. So I went down to Nashville and finally saw a show there, and it lived up to the hype.
That's awesome.
I have never been to Nashville, ever.
I don't think I have either, actually.
Have you?
I've driven through it, but I've never really stopped.
And I feel like every second or third person we talk to on the show, like they not only do they mention Nashville, but there's like a lot to talk about. I'm like,
so it got to a point where, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I mean, in a given period of how many artists we have here, like 70% of them live in Nashville.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so we just,
Patty Purcell moved to Nashville, right?
And so we just interact with so many people. In a lot of even if some of them are Michigan people that we met in Michigan or grew up here or live here or whatever, but have since relocated, and we still have them come back a lot, which is awesome. But a couple years ago, we had a relationship with a venue down in Nashville, and we came up with this idea of like a venue. Could we do like a venue swap for the weekend?
Yeah.
And we just felt compelled that like so many of these artists drive here from Nashville to Lake Orion to do shows here, and we're always like, man, they're driving here from Nashville. Like that's not easy to do. And so we're finally like, you know what? We're going to bring a show to you. And we just knew so many. So we did this venue takeover in Nashville for a night and just called on so many artists that we knew that lived there. And we're like, you can do a 21st Street show, but it's going to be like right 5 minutes from your house. Like you don't have to drive to Michigan to do it. Yeah. And so we did a show in Nashville with like our brand on it, but just did like just did as many artists as we could. Just to say like, it'll be just like a 21st Street show, but you don't have to drive all the way to Michigan. And it was super fun and really cool. We hope we can do it again, but we just felt like, it was something nice to do. But like, you guys always drive all the way to us. Let us drive to you for once.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
For sure.
Cool extension. I was gonna say, oh yeah, there's so much more to this story though, right? So you mentioned to us earlier that when you started this off, there was a lot more going on, and now you guys have kind of focused in on the music. But tell us about the building, because there's some historic means to this building too, right?
Absolutely.
It's been around Lake Orion for a long time.
Yep. And it was a creamery at one point, and then most recently when the story I was telling where Alan felt at that point it was like an old antique shop was the most recent. But yeah, when they kind of were deciding to kind of refurbish the building, redo it, they wanted to pay homage to a lot of that stuff. A couple of cool things. There are two other spaces that are part of the building, and one is on the lower, there's a lower level walkout on the back of our building that faces the children's park in downtown Lake Orion. And we wanted to make that a creamery or an ice cream shop as kind of an ode to the former creamery. And so we operated that for a while. It was an ice cream shop. It's now run by a great local company called Cookies and Cream that run it. And they do ice cream in the summer. Again, it's right on a children's park, so it works out great for the kids. Go to the park.
Yeah. Best spot for an ice cream shop.
Right.
Yep. And then there's a cafe. We call it the Social Cafe. That's just adjacent to the venue, again, that we used to operate. And now post-COVID was taken over by another great local company, Shaded Bloom Coffee, who now operates the cafe and creates just a nice dynamic of people can come in, get something to drink, a snack, and then come into the show.
I just drank a Shaded Bloom coffee.
Yeah.
It was delicious.
So they've been great partners, and it just allowed us to focus on music, which is what all of our passions were. Those were ancillary things that we thought were part of the whole project. But when we kind of really sat down and thought, like, what is our passion and what are we good at? It was this. And so it made sense to just kind of find good partners for those things. And it's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, if you think about it, it's cool. You've given the opportunity for more local businesses to operate, and they do their thing. They focus on that, and they do it well. And coffee seems like a good fit for this venue.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like even just in general, people coming in to get coffee, like just having a small little music venue to see, I'm going to go to that show. Like, it just seems like the right audience too. That you
well,
come
and
in.
I mean, what I always tell people, because we'll get emails and they'll ask, like about what do you guys serve, what don't you serve, things like that, and what oftentimes we'll direct them to is, I mean, what another really cool aspect of what we've done here in the last 7 years is just to be a part of the growth in downtown Lake Orion in general, and what downtown Lake Orion looks like now versus what it looked like then. There's so many good restaurants and bars and things like that like when people ask, where should I go? I've never been to Lake Orion. What should I do before the show? We provide them with, like, man, there's so many good spots to hit. If you want to have a couple of drinks before the show, go there, whatever, and then come over, grab dessert here, and the show starts, and so a lot of people do that and kind of make a night out of it in Lake Orion, which is, it's been awesome to watch.
Yeah, it is cool. I grew up in Oxford, and Lake Orion 20, 30, 40 years ago, all I can remember was, Broadway Records.
Yeah.
That was the place to go in Lake
record
Orion. Record store, yeah.
Cool.
I mean, there were some other things going on too, but how much this town has grown, the downtown has grown, I should say.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really cool to see.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, when we first opened here, there was a handful of bars and restaurants, but there's a lot that are open now that weren't prior to us opening. So it's been fun to watch, and so glad that so many have made it through COVID, because we always talk about, there was a period like the 2 months leading up to COVID where the two of the new, like Bitter Tom's is a restaurant, Oat Soda they had just opened up. I think our 2 months, like leading to COVID, we had like almost every show was sold out. Like, things were jamming down there. And we were just like, man, downtown Lake Orion, like, feels like, it's hopping. And then as like March came, it was like, everything shut down. I was so glad to see that, like, those two survived, and some of the other newer ones that had opened up have survived. And then some newer ones and that have even opened up now.
Yeah.
It's been great that, they were able to make it, and so were we.
Yeah. So what's next for the venue? Is it just a matter of getting out there and getting new artists in here, or is there anything different that you guys are looking to?
Yeah, for us, I mean, it's a couple of things. One is, it's crazy. Like, we laugh about it all the time, but like, we're 7 years into this, right? And we almost on a weekly basis hear from people that say, walk by or live close by, and they're like, I never even knew you guys were here. They'll stumble upon this place and be like, what's this place? So I mean, at the name of this business we've chosen to be in is selling tickets, right? And so a general awareness that we're still working on.
That's always good.
And we do, because of the artists we book. A lot of times people will drive from a considerable distance away, and a lot of that's driven by the artist, because it's an artist that they're a huge fan of, and they'll come and drive from insane distances. Then they'll walk in here and they're like, I just drove from Canada, and this, and you're like, we do get people from greater distances away, but it's also like this general awareness in our own backyard as well. And so that's a continued struggle of, like, selling tickets, getting people to come out. The other thing we found in Michigan, and it's something we're working on, is how seasonal it is in Michigan when you have an indoor concert venue.
Yeah.
Is like, once the weather turns cold, the period we're coming into right now, we do really well.
Yeah.
Because it's cold out, people don't have as much to do. They think, let's go and see a concert.
Yeah.
The summer, you guys know Michigan summers, when they're nice and all that, and convincing someone to come inside at 8 o'clock when it's gorgeous outside and and a lot of times the sun doesn't go down until 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And you can enjoy. And in the summer, there's so much free music. There's so much
Right.
outdoor music. And so that's something we're working on as well. And, just what other options could be. And because we have done, like I mentioned, with the Warren Treaty and things like that, we've done some outdoor stuff. We have a great series we do courtesy of the Lake Orion DDA and the gazebo in the children's park right behind the venue. That we do a summer series 1 day a week in the summer.
Okay, yeah.
It's free to the public. And on gorgeous nights, they'll get hundreds of people turn out, and we're able to present a lot of the similar artists that we present in here outside.
Oh,
and
great!
It's a great environment. So things like that, just kind of figuring out. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's keep doing what we do, which is, as I mentioned, loving on artists and providing them a space to showcase their talents.
I got one last question around tickets. So I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I assume all tickets are bought through the venue.
Yep. So through our website.
Yeah. So there's no ticketing agent or anything you have to deal with. Obviously, I knew you weren't using Ticketmaster, but
Do you add a 30% fee to each ticket purchase?
We have a very, very minuscule that I would challenge you to find anywhere else that has a less. For the first 5, 6-ish years, we actually, when we started, we had built our own ticketing system.
Ooh,
sweet.
We literally
Yeah,
built it.
That's cool.
And we used that for the first 5 or 6 years. Just within the last, I think it was last year, January of this year, we did switch to we still have our own website, but the actual ticketing piece that's built in is from an organization that came out of COVID, that came out of NEVA, that organization I mentioned.
Okay.
Was a group of guys that built this new platform that they're venue owners, and they built a system that was for venue owners by venue owners.
That's different. And that sounds reasonable, right?
And so we use that now, but it's still all through our website.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I mean, I think our ticket prices still are very cheap for what you get to experience.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, you pay way too much. I've not gone to see a concert because I was like, I'm not paying $50 extra for no reason, just to tack on to my $100 ticket.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, there's
$45 or something silly.
Yeah, there's a lot in the industry that's going on with that.
I refuse, man.
That with what's going on with
No thanks.
Yeah.
the whole Live Nation and Ticketmaster thing, and
exactly.
there's a lot going on with that, and yeah, you could really get me going on that. As an independent venue owner, but it's definitely something. I think it's something that there's going to be some changes coming. Exactly what that'll look like from an independent venue. Just a few weeks ago, there was a big issue that came up with Live Nation specifically that came out with a new initiative that was specifically targeted at under 3,000 caps.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of pushback from just like, hey, if you want to do it, if it's an initiative that you're going to push out to all venues, that's great.
Across the board.
But when you're specifically now targeting small venues, by saying under 3,000 cap, you're now targeting small venues.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's a complicated issue, right? Because what they were doing was giving incentives to the artist, and I'm not going to blame any artist. I mean, any artist that would take their incentives, I would absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to blame an artist ever, because if they can make more money, go make more money.
Yeah.
But it just felt like it was targeted at small venues, which was unfortunate, because I feel like we're already kind of having that uphill battle, and then if they're going to start putting in incentives for the artists to get them to come play their rooms and not play the independent venues, it's just another thing that makes it a little more difficult for us.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't Taylor Swift have a whole thing where she was spanking Live Nation and Ticketmaster? So I forgot what we probably talked about it on one of our episodes.
we did,
but now it's
And
like,
I mean, again, I can't blame any other. I know Zach Bryan just tried, prior to he tried doing, I think, e-tix or something.
Yeah.
And I think it didn't go that well. So
the more that,
so now this tour he's doing Ticketmaster.
but the more big names that do even talk about it, just getting the awareness out there ramps up. Hopefully, more people to be again.
Right.
Something will happen. Something will change. It's not going to until people stop paying these freaking fees.
Yep.
Whatever.
So what do you guys got coming up here soon? We'll probably this will be probably out in December, let's say. So what's you guys got coming up in the next few months?
In December we do a lot of cool Christmas shows that
Ava Swiss, she's got a Christmas show coming up.
Ava Swiss will be here doing a Christmas show. A few other that we've done annually now that have kind of become traditions almost. Jill Jack, who's a great Detroit artist, she's done it annually now. She just sold out. 2 shows she sold out
Nice.
already.
Good for her.
That does an annual Christmas show. But yeah, tons of good stuff in the new year. Even really excited about some artists that we've never had that we're getting that have been artists that have kind of been on the radar, but just for different reasons didn't work out with routing and things like that. So yeah, it's I would say probably as time goes by, I keep saying this, but it's true. Is just our lineup is getting better and better and better. So super excited into December and what the new year is going to look like. So yeah, all our shows are listed on our website at 20frontstreet.com. And yeah, I would encourage, come make a night out of it in Lake Orion. Enjoy one of the restaurants and come see a show.
You can stay at Jeff's parents' house. They still live in Oxford, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
You can go just give us a holler. You can go stay at their house. They would love it. They would love it.
For sure. We'll promote 20 Front Street.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Kevin, for taking the time today, offering up your space to do
Sure.
this. Amazing venue. I'd be here for sure for any artist that I want to see.
Yeah.
Intimate night.
Well, you guys are welcome anytime, and I'm sure I know some of the bands and stuff that you guys interview on the podcast, are people that are passing through, and that
Yep.
we have a lot of common acquaintances. So yeah, come join us anytime.
Rock and roll.
Sweet.
All right. See you guys.
If you enjoyed this episode, check out more episodes on any streaming service out there today, as well as our website.
www.themittenmusic.com.
You can also find playlist and concert listings there too.
Check us out on social medias, Facebook and Instagram.